Hi, and welcome back to the Ascension Playground. This is Ursie, and I gotta say, I'm still so thoroughly enamored with looking at the constellations and the stars, and then trying to understand my own soul's journey using what's called galactic astrology. So, as many of you know, I'm in a course by Julia Balaz, who's based in Ireland. And in the organic nature of this course, I've been invited and followed my own gut instinct to go ahead and start doing these little mini recordings to help share the very basics of what I call light language, astrology, but not just Western or Vedic. It's moving more into this place of adding the stars into astrology. This is something that Bernadette Brady has written about and has her own program as well, adding the stars into astrology. Well, today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the basics of planets and how the planets influence us. So just going with this narrative of the moment of your birth, how beautiful that moment that you were born. So here you are, you're born on Earth, and we look at the heavens and there's like a snapshot taken, which determines perhaps what kind of playing ground your soul chose to experience in this lifetime, what kind of cosmic wardrobe, who your family would be, who the actors would be. The actors I'm going to be talking about are more like the planets. The stage set would be the houses, the 12 zodiacal houses. The wardrobe you wear is the signs, the zodiac signs, Aries, Pisces, the whole 12 signs of the zodiac. But now it's getting fun because we're going to start looking at the dynamic of the actors. So there's actors or planets that really enjoy being in their own home. It's kind of like a baseball team playing in their own field or their own home team. Well, so too, the planets, there's certain houses and signs that the planets feel like they're at home. And there's other places where they don't feel at home. So there's this term called exalted or domicile, domicile meaning at home. And the opposite is in detriment or at fall, in fall. Okay, so without further ado, I'm just going to give a little run through on the planets in our solar system. Okay, so see you after the little slideshow that I created. Here we go. This slideshow I created has been inspired by Julia, and you'll see I quote her, her course material. Here we go, it's coming. So I created this little picture because as we all venture into in our class, how to understand all this material that Julia has given us, it's remarkable. So I created this little temple. It's like the Parthenon, but here we go. There's the 12 signs of the zodiac, and they have 12 houses. Now, the actors are the planets and the fixed stars. In a previous video, I talked a little bit about aspects. That's like the script. Are we going to be enemies or are we going to be friends? But first, let's get to know our planets. So here we go. Oh, and in quantum soul readings, we use our mind to understand, how to navigate, which is very important, how to talk the language of light language. But then half of a reading, if you decide to become a practitioner, is basically using your intuition and learning how to dowse and use your pendulum, okay, to get answers, to support your client. Here we go. Here's two paragraphs I pulled out from Julia's Quantum Soul Guidance course materials for practitioners. In it, the planets in astrology, and you see this nice little image I put in, at its core, we're all looking up at the heavens. And the planets, when we observe their movements and their specific relationships to each other, that's how we're going to get more information about, oh, what's the movie of your life going to feel like? Now, this is not all predestined. It's just there's a greater potential, and the potentials can be either very strong or they can be very light. But our free will allows us to navigate within that narrative. But typically, there is a broad script. Okay. And in it, every planet represents a different kind of energy. You know, when we look at the personal planets, which I'll explain in a little bit, that's where we're really going to go into the psychological aspects of what were you born with, you know, and if you agree with that, how does it fit? And do you want to move forward in another direction, or do you want to improve? Anyway, for the classmates, I'm calling out this information from Julia's course material, section 4.6. All right, next slide. Here we go. I had to learn some vocabulary, which I'm a little embarrassed I didn't know before, but I'm going to share this just in case you aren't aware of the same thing. So this is a graphic of our solar system. Did you know, I'm going to stop share for just a minute. Did you know there's only one solar system? I was like a little confused. I thought, oh, here's our solar system and then there's other solar systems. But here's the thing that I learned. Our sun, when we look outside, that's our sun, is not a planet, it's a star. Okay, and that star's name is Sol, S-O-L, Sol. That's why we're in a solar system. Okay, that root word Sol. So the other systems, other star systems have different names, but the one that we live in with Earth, it's a solar system. And back in the day, the ancients would call the sun Helios, Helios, H-E-L-I-O-S. So it's very specific to us when we say our solar system. Okay, that's my little, did you know moment. Let me go back to the chart. Oops, it looks like it popped me out. Here we go. I've got to reopen it. Excuse me while I advance. I guess I won't be popping in and out too much. Here we go. So when we talk about our solar system as the planets, and I'm going to tell you that the sun and here's Luna or the moon are not really planets. They're luminaries. Okay, but we kind of include them and we say, okay, we're going to talk about the astrology and our planets. But just so you know, the moon and the sun are not planets. They're luminaries. They are the light holders. The sun sending its beautiful rays of light outward and the moon reflecting that light. All right, but here's our team lineup. We've got Mercury closest to the sun. He's very speedy. Then we have Venus next to Mercury. Here's Earth, where we are born into and onto. And here's our little moon that's orbiting the Earth. Next to the Earth, outward this way, is Mars. We have an asteroid belt here. And then look at how massive Jupiter is. So when you say he is the planet of expansion, no kidding. Look how huge he is. He's also kind of in mythology known as, the planet that best resembles Zeus, the god Zeus, the god of Olympus, the top dude. All right, next to Jupiter, we have Saturn with the rings, Uranus, Neptune, and then sadly, way down here, Pluto has been degraded to a dwarf planet. Poor little Pluto, but he's still looked at in astrology as a planet. That hasn't changed yet, but they are discovering other dwarf planets like Haumea, Makemake, and Eris, and you see their size. So I just wanted to show you, this is the team lineup, major planets. And then I wanted to give you this particular graphic. So you see that the rotation around the sun, the orbit, has different speeds. Mercury will go around the sun very quickly in 88 days. That's an average. Venus, 225 days, so a little slower compared to speedy Mercury. The Earth, this is how we go and use going around the sun as one calendar year. Okay, 365 days. And then there's Mars. Jupiter takes 12 years. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Now, while we're on this graphic, I want to show you, here's Earth. And when we talk about personal planets, the planets that are closest to Earth, it includes Mercury, Venus, and Mars. These are like personal planets. And then Jupiter and Saturn, they're in their own league of transpersonal planets, these two. And then these last three, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are considered outer planets. These move very slowly. Look at 284 years for Pluto to go around the sun. So these three outer planets have more of an effect on generations. Think of the generations born with certain alignments with these slower moving outer planets. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that graphic. Now I'm going to move right into the astrology of the planets. The sun, remember I called it a luminary? I'm not calling it a planet. And I pulled a lot of this information from two sources. One is a book called Astrology, a workbook for yourself by Dimitra George. And I also went online to the New York Post and I got these great graphics and some other great keywords. So I want to give a shout out to the New York Post and Astrology for Yourself, along with the good work of Julia Balaz. All right. Well, I don't want to stay too long on each planet, but I'll basically tell you, when you learn astrology, so many people just know, oh, what's your sun sign? You know, or they can call it really your star sign, your sun sign. It's one huge, very important aspect of you. The sun loves to be in the sign of Leo, and it's the ruler of the fifth house, which is Leo. And then these words, fixed fire, yang, masculine energy. So holding strong, fire, you know, I assert, passionate. We start with Leo and the sun connection. So if you read on your astrology reports from Julia Balaz's calculator, if you see that your fifth house has Leo, or the sun in the fifth house, or all three, you can know that that's triple scoops of something very specific, a lot of light. And what are some of the qualities? Well, the sun represents your self-expression, creativity, leadership, confidence. It basically is holding, and I'll read this, your basic identity and conscious purpose. Down here, you're going to see it takes 1 month to transit between the zodiacal signs for the sun, and the speed it goes around the earth. Okay, so the speed of the earth around the sun is that 365 days and a quarter. This is why that quarter, when you add up 4 quarters, you get leap year, right? To reestablish the 365 days. All right, hopefully that was not too fast. But again, it's a personal planet. So when you find out where your sun sign is, which house, just know if it falls within Leo, you've got very strong assertion, fifth house of creativity and joy and children. All right. I know that's a lot of information, but I'll just keep rolling here. The second luminary. This is where the other one was yang. This is yin, the feminine principle. So it's not female, it's feminine qualities. The moon, again, reflects the light of the sun, and it's the luminary of our emotions. So in every astrology chart, we have a placement of our sun and our moon. So the three big things to look at is where's your sun, where's your moon, and where's your ascendant. So the ascendant is not actually a planet, it's a specific place in time. We'll talk about that in another video. All right, where does the moon like to be? The moon loves the sign of Cancer. It's at home in Cancer in the 4th house. So if your moon is in the 4th house, especially in the sign of Cancer, or either of those two, just know that you might have greater abilities to tap into the emotional realms. Some of the key words are femininity, intuition, your instincts, The focus for the moon is my emotions, feelings, and daily habits. And then you can probably read how long it takes to transit between the zodiacal signs, 2 to 3 days. So the moon moves relatively fast, right? You can track them once a month, right? So what does it represent? Your inner world and soul. Isn't that interesting? Our soul. And so its speed is approximately 28 days to go around the sun. Oh, look at this next. This is our first planet. And again, a personal planet. Look at Mercury. Wow. Remember I showed you from that second graphic, like how close he was to the sun and how fast he moves? Wow, but look at how beautiful this graphic is. Love the blues and the gold tones. Mercury is the planet of communication. So if you look at your astrological report, find out where is your Mercury? How do I communicate? Um, do I communicate with fire and emotions? Do I communicate more quietly or introspectively? You can learn all of that in your Mercury placement. Now, if your Mercury happens to be in Gemini or the third house, that would be a strong communication for Mercury. Or if it shows up in Virgo and the sixth house. So let's say it could be Virgo in the third house. It could be Gemini in the sixth house. These are just markers for where Mercury is the strongest. Chat, chat, chat. Real good, strong communications. Okay, so look at the keywords. Intelligence. All right, so your grandchild is born, or your child is born, or you've got teenagers you're working with trying to guide them to college. Check and see where their Mercury is. It's a highlighter, an indicator of perhaps their intelligence, how they communicate, and how they work with information. It's basically their capacity to think, speak, and learn. So when you start really learning the language of astrology, you'll get to see, oh, slow to speak. Maybe there's a speech issue early on in their life. This is the magic of astrology. You can test it for accuracy, but boy, once you start learning to read the tea leaves, it's quite remarkable and may just help guide parents to getting early intervention for those slow speakers. Okay, so how long does Mercury take to go between the zodiacal signs? 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. So it's going to stay, let's say, in the sign of Taurus for 3 to 4 weeks. And you know, we were always talking about Mercury retrograde. That means it appears to go backwards. So that's why it's 3 to 4 weeks. It's not a very specific amount of time. This planet represents your mind and your style of communication. Remember I said, oh, are you like a direct, forceful, bombastic public speaker? Or are you more like, hey, let's put a little group together and meet at the park and have a little chit chat with maybe 2 or 3 people at most? All right. The speed that Mercury goes around the sun, look at that, basically 88 days, right? If you round it, that's a fast little Mercury. All right, thank you, Planet Mercury. Next, take a look. If you're just listening to this, take a look at these planets. My goodness. Again, New York Post, thank you very much. Look at this gorgeous image of Venus, the planet of love and beauty. Yes, very much like the mythology of Venus, right? So Venus, her home is in Taurus, the second house, or Libra, the seventh house. And remember I told you, we're still talking about the personal planets. So if you want to find out how do you approach love and beauty, how does your partner approach love and beauty? Look where their Venus is located. And that's Venus with a V. Okay, look at the key words: love, attraction, art, pleasure. Venus is the planet that represents our capacity to attract people and the things that you love and value. All right. In Taurus, it's the value, the second house of this is mine. And in Libra, the seventh house of here we are, one-on-one marriage. or one-on-one partnerships that are deep. Okay, so I love this part. It represents within each of us our aesthetics and our love language. Do you know what your love language is? Well, go look at your Venus in case you're a little confused. How fast does Venus move around the sun? 224 days. It's getting a little faster. Not as fast as Mercury, though. All right, let's see. Thank you, Venus, you beautiful planet of love. Here's our next planet, and another personal planet, Mars. Okay, there are times where we really need to tap into our Mars, the planet of action. Instead of sitting on the sideline or waiting for something else to happen, when Mars gets triggered in a personal chart, it's like, now's the time. I've been thinking, I've been preparing, now's the time. Mars feels most at home in the sign of Aries. That's cardinal fire and the Yang principle, which is masculine. If your Mars is in Aries or the first house, you have a very strong Mars typically. And I say typically because we have to look at how it's aspected. But again, Mars is at home in Aries or the first house. Now, guess what? Just to make things even more fun, I added the ancient rulership of Mars includes Scorpio. So if your Mars is in Scorpio or the 8th house, it's also potentially very strong. What are the key words? Passion, sex, aggression, conflict. This is the warrior planet. And it's not always the bad warrior. There are times we need to say, okay, let's go do this. It's about our capacity to assert ourselves based on our personal desire. Again, it's not the collective desire, it is personal. And how long does it take to go from one sign to the next within the zodiac? 6 to 7 weeks. Okay, what it represents within us is, our sex drive. Is it slow? Is it fast? Does it exist? I don't know. Go check your Mars placement and see how it's aspected. The speed that Mars moves at is 687 days. Whew. So again, see how we're going a little, like Mercury was super fast, Venus getting, a little slower. And then it just perpetually, the further away you get from the sun, you've got a longer track to run to go around the sun, right? So that makes sense. The further away, the slower the planet. All right, let's see what our next planet. Ooh, okay, so now we are moving into what's called, the next two are transpersonal planets. Now, what is transpersonal? We're moving away from it's about me to more, it's about a little bit more than me. It has to include more, maybe you and others, okay? So Jupiter, the planet of expansion. Look at his beautiful, I didn't even know he had like these red-orange stripes with blue rings around him too. Usually you just see him as the large dude, but never such beautiful detail until these recent NASA images have come through. Where is Jupiter most at home? In Sagittarius, the 9th house ruler. So if you have Sagittarius, or if Jupiter's in Sagittarius for you, or in the 9th house, you have a very strong planet of expansion. What are you expanding? Now, also the ancient ruler was including Pisces. So if your, natal Jupiter, what you were born with, if Jupiter was in Pisces or the 12th house, you have a very strong planet of expansion. It may be that you're looked at as someone who's very lucky. You can be very optimistic. You might even have a vision. These are all words that represent Zeus, again, the god of Mount Olympus. What's happening with Jupiter? It's your search for meaning, truth, and ethical values. Now, let's see, how long does Jupiter stay in the signs, the zodiac signs? Well, it takes a little over a year. So when Jupiter hits, let's say Libra, it's going to stay in Libra for about a year. And what does it represent? Where you find your luck. Where are you lucky? Well, if it's in your, seventh house of marriage, aren't you lucky? You get the marriage of all marriages. Good for you. Mine happens to be in the house of service and work. Work, work, work. Aren't I lucky? Anyway, moving right along. Look how fast, or actually not so fast, it takes Jupiter almost 12 years to go around the sun. So when you find where your natal Jupiter sits, it'll take 11.86 years for it to return, what's called a Jupiter return, for more expansion. So that's how astrology rolls. There's kind of a method to this tracking of patterns once you find out what the players are or who the players are. All right, thank you, Jupiter. We're moving to our second transpersonal planet, Saturn. All right, Saturn, he is the planet of structure. A lot of times he gets a bad rap. People say, okay, you want to do your inner work? Do your Saturn. Do your Saturn. What does that mean? Well, if your Saturn happens to sit in the sign of Capricorn, which is cardinal earth and a very yin, feminine, receptive energy, or if your Saturn sits in the 10th house, that structure may come easier for you than others. Okay, so also, if you have your Saturn sitting in the sign of Aquarius, again, your natal chart is in Aquarius or the 11th house, you could have an uber strong planet of structure. Maybe it's easier for you to build. Let's see what the keywords say. Discipline, authority, tradition, perseverance. Does structure come easy for you? If it does, maybe you're here to help build. Others may have a real hard time understanding how to put the pieces together. It really is talking to us, Saturn, as a player or an actor, of our capacity to create order, form, and discipline in our life. Look at this. It takes 2 to 3 years in each of the signs. Saturn, it's getting slower and slower to get around the sun. And what does it represent? It represents where you must take responsibility and learn your life lessons. So if you really buy into this idea that we're here as souls having these human experiences and are here to expand ourselves and grow through our life lessons, look at where your Saturn is, how it's placed, and do your Saturn. Yeah. The speed at which Saturn moves is about 29 and a half years it takes to get around the sun. So for some of us who are like me, my age, I've already experienced what's called my second Saturn return. The first Saturn return was like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to build, not over here. Oh, it doesn't feel good, but okay. My second Saturn return, I was building in the right direction and it went pretty smoothly. Here we are now with Uranus, the next planet, the planet of revolution. Now, again, the planet Uranus is what we call an outer planet. It wasn't discovered until relatively recently. And so it had to come into the language of the astrologer once it was found. If your natal Uranus sits in the sign of Aquarius, then you have a very strong, fixed air, masculine energy, or if your Uranus sits in the 11th house, because Aquarius in the 11th house is where Uranus feels most at home. Why? Because of its energy of revolution, change, and freedom. I'm not going with the status quo. I want to see the future. It's very future oriented. And so when we talk about the Aquarian age, The planet that will guide us, this is in my view, will be watching and tracking Uranus and seeing how it aspects other key planets as we move and evolve with humanity. Okay, what are the key words? It's the individual. You know, this is a very interesting planet because it speaks to humanitarianism. Again, it's not about me, personal. It's not about we, maybe transpersonal. It's about a bigger view. Remember, these are the distant planets that we're talking about, way out there. It takes about 7 years for Uranus to move between one zodiacal sign to the next. So you can see it's very far away from the sun, and its orbit around the sun and its impact with Earth is very slow moving. So it represents how you express your eccentricity. Now it takes about 83, 84 years to go around the sun once. So if we're lucky, we'll have a Uranus return, on our 84th birthday. How would that feel? Anyway, change and freedom, invention, suddenness, and yes, even the art of astrology. It's really the revolutionary who says, I see the future and I want, we should move this way, but it's not in the collective yet. So oftentimes it's looked at as, what, are you nuts? So how do you work with your Uranus? Where does it sit? Again, if it sits in the sign of Aquarius or the 11th house, you'll have a very extra or an extra dosage of this idea of, no one can hold me back. All right, next planet. We're getting close. We have Neptune and Pluto, just 2 more. All right, for this little video. Neptune, the planet of magic. Now, I typically don't hear that word magic, but the New York Times or the New York Post use that word magic, and it's sitting well with me. Usually it's the planet of spirituality. And then sometimes people say, well, but that has like an overtone of religiousness. So planet of magic, where is your magic sitting? Neptune. If you have your Neptune in Pisces, which is mutable water and the feminine receptive nature, if your Neptune's in Pisces and or the 12th house, you have a strong capability, I would say, and potential for creating magic. So yes, here's the key word: spirituality, fantasy, mysticism, illusion. Now, the negative shadow side of this outer planet is, escapism, deception. Sometimes alcoholism and other drug use can be looked at when we see a chart and see its predisposition or not for escapism. How do you numb yourself out, right? So if Neptune again is in Pisces or the 12th house ruler, how do you channel that energy for the greater good, for your personal good? It's speaking about your capacity to transcend the finite self by expressing a greater unity of the whole. It's like, for me, remembering the ocean, returning back. Neptune and Pisces is water. All right. How long does it take in each sign? 10 to 12 years. What does it represent? Your imagination and your mystical side. So if you find that you're wired a little differently than your brothers and sisters or other family members, look and see where your Neptune is aspected and see where theirs lands. Maybe that will help answer the question of why you're so predisposed to even learning about astrology, right? How long does it take to go around the sun, the Sol, Helios? 164 years. Holy mackerel. I don't think I'm going to be around 164 years when I have a Neptune return, right? Okay, last planet to share with you today. Again, these are the actors within the astrology of your natal chart. Pluto, the planet of rebirth. Ooh, So I think I shared earlier on that unfortunately Pluto has been demoted from planet to dwarf planet. Sorry, Pluto, but in astrology, we still celebrate you as this planet that holds the energy of rebirth. If your Pluto is in Scorpio or the 8th house, so, when you look at how slow Pluto moves, it's really looking at which house is your Pluto in. If it's the 8th house, you could have a very strong Pluto planet. And so transformation, death, evolution, power, the subconscious may be very strong in your chart. Wouldn't it be interesting to look at and see where Carl Jung, the psychologist, where was Pluto sitting and how was it aspected in his chart, his natal chart? Someone who worked and wrote about the subconscious. The message for the energy of Pluto is about our capacity to transform and renew ourselves. So to renew requires, unfortunately, death and then rebirth. And that could be a metaphorical death. It's not just physical death. It's this, I'm not that person anymore. I am a different person now. Thank you very much. I moved this way. And what does it represent for you? How did you transform? And how were you reborn? And you can even track when you start looking at the tea leaves in astrology. The speed of Pluto, the planet going around, or the dwarf planet going around our sun, Sol, is 248 years. My goodness, 248 years. Yeah, we'll have to be reborn and have another few lifetimes for Pluto to return back to its original spot of this incarnation. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you for this trip through our solar system with our major planets and luminaries. Again, our sun and moon are luminaries. And then we have our personal planets where you can find out a little bit more about how that metaphorical energy of that particular planet works out within your life. And then we have our transpersonal planets, how we show up with more of the collective. And then we have our outer planets, the outer ones that just were recently discovered within the last several hundred years, or actually 150, maybe 150 years. So it's like, okay, how does it all fit? Well, if you go into Julia Balaz's calculator, which big news, it now is the calculator at a domain name called galacticAstrocharts.com. galacticAstrocharts.com. She rebranded the calculator because unfortunately it was confusing another website that already existed. And so the new brand is galacticAstrocharts.com. Go find out where your planets are. And if you happen to be sitting in any of those houses or signs that I just shared, woohoo, you might learn something about yourself or your loved ones. Okay, till next time, we'll see you again on the Ascension Playground. Bye, everybody.